So I'll talk a little bit about the commercial. So my name's Chuck Shaw. I'm at AMD in their client business unit, and my focus is on commercial and our products, our messaging, and how we go to market with commercial. I previously was doing sales at AMD and recently moved into the client role to help bring additional focus to our client, or to our business commercial focus within client. Yeah, that's an interesting question because a couple years ago, we were very much known as the consumer company, and we made a conscious decision that we needed to go after the commercial market. So we did some research, and there's a lot of similarities, but there are some differences. So we actually created a unique product line within our APU products called the Pro, which stands for Performance, Reliability, and Opportunity. And we'll go through each of those pillars and why we selected that as to go out and address the commercial market. So, again, there's some similarities, but there is some differences in terms of what commercial customers are looking at. For example, under reliability, with the Pro APUs, we provide a longevity and stability pledge. So we stabilize the driver, so we keep those drivers stable and constant for up to 18 months. We have a long-term roadmap where the APUs are available longer, which is very important to commercial customers, right? And consumers very much turn and burn. Every 3 months is a different cycle, and they're used to just things changing constantly. Whereas in the corporate and commercial world, they want things that are stable and consistent. So one of the pillars within our APU brand under reliability is to provide that stable and consistent set of products and drivers. Again, consumers don't really want that. They want the latest gaming driver. Commercial guys want to know that their driver is stable over a long period of time. So that's, for example, just one area where the commercial market starts to separate from the consumer market, and where AMD is very focused on our commercial APUs, our Pro APUs, to go deliver that to the end users. Yeah, there is some differences in terms of longevity as well, right? So we keep the APUs around longer. We are going to continue, as our products evolve over time, look at what needs of commercial are from a hardware perspective, that manifests itself into certain features like security, manageability, and so forth, where there are differences. Sometimes the hardware is fairly similar, but there's a lot of firmware and software that makes that difference, right? For example, manageability. Most consumers don't really care if their systems are manageable. In the Pro APU, we support what's called DASH, which is Desktop and Mobile Architecture for System Hardware, I think is what the acronym actually stands for. But it's an open standards manageability platform that has certain hardware requirements as well as firmware and software requirements that all come together to create a manageable platform. So the Pro APUs, we go through that process of qualifying the firmware, qualifying the software, testing it to make sure it's manageable, so that when you deploy out to a commercial enterprise customer, they're looking for that manageability. And again, you'll see one of the themes we have within the AMD kind of philosophy overall is we like open standards, right? Mm-hmm. So we're not a vendor that likes to create our own proprietary solution, and then the main goal of that is to lock a customer into a certain type of solution. We continually go after whether it's security or manageability. We go after open standards. So the Dash is an open standards-based manageability platform that's part of the Pro. Again, that's under that reliability pillar of Pro, where we want manageable solutions. Yeah, so the new Bristol Ridge products that we're introducing, kind of, again, build on that Pro legacy, right? Where our Pro value prop and first one I'll pick on is performance, right? So there's an uplift in performance, generation over generation. And I guess go back and look at my notes. I believe it's roughly 14% on the CPU side and 21, 22% on the GPU side. But the big part that we're doing on the Bristol Ridge, especially as it relates to our desktop products, is we're having an efficiency story. So those performance gains come not only, hey, I get more performance gen over gen, but there's a significant drop in our power consumption, up to 33% in the design power profile from previous generation to the new generation. And what that really enables commercial customers to do is create interesting new form factors. Again, kind of honing in on the desktop side of things, where you see these large desktop form factors start to shrink down smaller and smaller and smaller. Now you can get these small 1 liter designs that have all the performance of flash generations, larger micro tower or small form factor desktop. So it's not just pure performance, especially again in the corporate world. If you're at home, you got one PC, hey, it's one thing. But if you're an enterprise managing 10,000, 20, 30, 40,000 desktops and notebooks, power efficiency becomes an important issue for you. So again, as we look at our Bristol Ridge Pro under that performance category, not only giving more performance, but we're doing it at a reduced power consumption, a higher efficiency. So it's really a win-win. It enables new form factors, provides more performance than you had before at a significant cost savings in terms of power consumption. So it's really a win-win. And that again, if you look at consumers, of course, somewhat interested, but commercial guys are very interested in that power efficiency story. So you're going to see a lot of focus from AMD as we go out with Bristol Ridge in the commercial market, especially again focused around that desktop power efficiency. And of course, on the notebook side, you have the battery life. So improving battery life so you get a better mobile experience. So again, under our performance, lots of increased performance, but at a great improvement in power efficiency. That's a question we've been, talking about for many years. And I'm actually going to go back a couple of years to an analogy that we like to do. AMD fundamentally believes, that the market's heading in a certain direction. Our competitor's picking a different bet, right? We believe that rich media, of course you see VR, and we can talk in a minute about how that actually has commercial implications, not just consumer implications. But we see this kind of rich consumption of data. And that requires not just a classical, CPU, which is very good at kind of serial computation. It also requires a GPU that's very good at parallel computation. And what AMD kind of had the foresight many years ago to see with their acquisition of ATI is that future was coming, and we need to marry those two things. And the analogy that was often done was like, it's like the two sides of your brain, right? You have the left half of your brain, you have the right-hand side of your brain. And one is a very logical, process-driven, and the other is more creative and artistic. So the CPU you can think of sort of as that logical serial processing. It's good at certain types of tasks, but there are other tasks that are very good towards a parallel or the creative side. And really, what makes a person really, kind of stand out from the crowd if they can use both sides of their brains. In fact, there's one theory that's why Einstein was so smart, is the left and right side were able to work in harmony together. And that's what AMD is doing with the APU, is it's taking the CPU, very good at serial type execution, and marrying it with parallel computation that's very good in the GPU. And we're very good at both pieces of that. And if we can marry those together, and it's been a multi-year process, and you're starting to really see the fruits of that labor as we kind of bring this, what we call homogeneous system architecture together. And what that does is it prepares the commercial customer for all types of applications, from basic office productivity, and in fact, the more computationally intensive applications, content creation, video editing, rich 3D, professional type applications. The more you swing to that side of the computation, the more the graphics picks up and more the APU actually shines even more. So if you marry those two things together, it really sets up the commercial customer for a mix of type of computing requirements for the future. And that's, again, under the performance pillar of our performance reliability opportunity, the Pro message. That's part of our performance thing. Is of course we're trying to improve the x86 all the time. You see those generational uplifts, the 14% with Bristol Ridge. You see even more on the graphics with over a 20% uplift in the graphics performance. So this is something we very much believe in, right? And we marry those two things together. Again, and one of the things that we look at in commercial is want to give customers choice. Well, now you have two different choices, all right? We have a vision for the future. It's the APU. Competitor has a slightly different vision for the future, right? It's all about x86. We think that's important, but it's required, but not necessarily sufficient by itself. So you really need both aspects of that to be successful in commercial from our perspective. So. That's a great question, because software always lags hardware, and much to the chagrin, I guess, of hardware manufacturers like AMD, right? our silicon often has many more capabilities than current software has. But that is also a future protection, right? So if you buy into something over time, it's for sure that we will get there, right? And the software vendors, software is not an easy thing, right? It takes them time and they have to iterate through that. So I have no doubt that there are some applications today, actually many of your standard Office applications use the GPU more than you realize. And in fact, we actually did it for a customer. We instrumented up a system. We went out and looked at their website, simple web browsing, right? And the GPU actually cycles increased pretty significantly while the CPU cycles were fairly constant, meaning that the GPU was being used even when going and surfing their standard website. So again, there's a lot of rich media. The software vendors are constantly, moving forward, and they will catch up. There's other aspects that we have embedded in the APU, fixed function blocks like video decode, video encode. When they first came out, those also weren't utilized, right? It was still very CPU centric. But over time, the software vendors started utilizing those fixed function blocks, and you see a dramatic improvement in performance, dramatic drop in power requirements. So, it is coming. It's in some extent here already, and it's going to just continue to evolve. We're also sort of getting to the Moore's law is running out of steam, right? If you don't start looking at parallelism in your computations, you're going to kind of hit a wall. I mean, one CPU core can only run so fast, and we're hitting the limits of those physical limits of that capability. So you're going to see more and more investment, we believe, in software. Make it multi-threaded, make it GPU aware. You see that with things like VR, 3D modeling, video assets. So all of that stuff utilizes it, and will continue to utilize it more and more as software vendors keep iterating their products. Right. So under reliability, we have the manageability and longevity we talked a little about, but the other big aspect of the reliability pillar is our security. And this is something you're going to see us lean more and more into. You'll see a lot of announcements in the future about security. Because you're right, in the corporate and enterprise world, you only have to open up the newspaper or the magazine or the local website to see what's going on in the world, right? That security is going to be top of mind, especially as you move up to larger and larger organizations that either have intellectual property they have to keep or requirements. If you're in the US and you have medical, right, there's certain government regulations that require you to protect that information under threat of criminal liability. So it's very important to protect the information. So AMD, again, you'll see a big part of is security with the Bristol Ridge. We talk more about what we call our AMD Secure Processor. It's basically a dedicated ARM core that's on our APU, so embedded within the chip, that handles security functions for us. And what's nice about that is it's unlike anybody else in the industry. A couple things. One is it's open standard, so it uses the ARM Trust Zone standard. Again, back to our open standards philosophy that we talked about under manageability, we extend that also to security. It's open standards based. But the interesting thing about what we do is it's dedicated only to security. You can virtualize those cores, and other folks within this, that ecosystem take their cores and they virtualize them for a security function. But our core, this ARM core on the APU, is dedicated to just security. And that makes it separate from the rest of the infrastructure within the chip, and it gives the opportunity to make a very, very secure. The other thing that's different from our competition is it's on chip, right? So there's many interesting things that you can do once it's on chip, because it has access to all the different resources within the CPU itself. And it doesn't require an external bus to communicate across. Everything can be done right on chip. And it actually, within our CPU, it's the first core that comes alive, which means before your x86 even starts executing any of the startup code, our security processor is actually up and running and can control that whole startup process. They give you things like secure boot, right? A hardware-based secure boot. So again, what's unique about AMD is that we do that on chip. It's a dedicated core, and we believe that's going to provide the foundation for the most best security that the market can provide. And we have some experience in some industries of securing data, and have a, so far, unblemished track record there of not being hacked. So we're kind of taking that ecosystem and moving it into the PC environment. which everybody knows that environment is rife with hacking and breaking in, and security is going to be a bigger and bigger issue. Well, one of the things that's nice is, again, it's open standards, right? So there's this ecosystem of development partners out there under the ARM Trust Zone. And as you know, AMD is a licensee of the ARM IP. So we create ARM cores, right? Like, in fact, I think in the server market, we actually have an ARM-based solution. So it leverages that, you know, that licensing agreement, and we provide our own IP into that. But it also, again, in the big context, is what it does is it creates an open standards. We work within an open standard. So it gives more flexibility to our customers than if we created a proprietary solution that was just for AMD. And again, that's a big, it actually in some ways makes our life more difficult, right? Because with open standards, everybody has access to it. But we firmly believe that customers want more choice. And when you give an open standards approach, that gives them a choice. And we believe that our IP and, you know, kind of our vision of the future is gonna hold up, and we're gonna be very competitive based on that. We don't need to try to lock ourselves in through proprietary solutions. So that's one of the reasons we did that. You know, we had a licensing, we put our own secret sauce in there, but we leveraged the open standards ecosystem. So some of it's a reference, but we do customize it, and we do work with partners to create unique solutions. Again, can't really speak about it, but there'll be some announcements coming up, right, where you'll see some unique implementations utilizing that. You could, but again, what we decided to do is create a core that was dedicated to nothing but security, because then there's basically no way for in a virtual environment to get compromised and the other thing is this core always comes up first. So before any x86 or any other code can sneak its way in there, you have this secure environment that comes up first that controls all of that. Yeah, so again, what we're doing is leveraging the ARM Trust Zone, right, which is this ecosystem, and I think that was very important to us to do the open standard. So that started with an ARM core and not trying to, you know, map that on top of a separate architecture, which is the GPU. So this is very well suited for the environment from which it's in, and plus it can also protect graphics memory. So anything moving across the memory bus there, this new ARM processor can monitor, right? So you could do like transparent memory encryption. So without changing any of the OS, without doing anything, you can encrypt all of your system memory, independent, and your OS isn't aware of it, your x86, your graphics components are not aware of it. All this memory is encrypted, so no one can go in and try to break into your memory if they have physical access to the computer, right? Or there's some tricks where you can freeze a RAM chip and take it off, and it'll actually retain its memory for a certain amount of time, and you can go read it. So that would now be rendered obsolete, and that's completely transparent of the OS. So there's some benefits to having it sort of separate, right, where it's not part of the regular ecosystem, regular OS, regular functioning, that this security processor now can go in there and kind of keep tabs on everything. And again, you're going to see a lot of developments from AMD along this lines as we move forward in time. Yeah, and that's actually a great point, because my competitor likes to try to segment. So some of their manageability and security functions are really just the top of the stack. All of our AMD Pro have that Pro value prop, performance, reliability, and opportunity, which we'll talk about in a minute. But so that reliability with manageability, security, you know, the performance angle, all of those are optimized. Longevity, stability, all Pro parts have those features. That's a great one, because again, when we get back to the reliability piece of the Pro value prop, right, longevity, with the AM4 infrastructure, right, our desktop infrastructure right now, that will carry not only up and down the stack, right, from the entry level all the way up to the top of the stack, it'll also carry out through time, through about 2020. So while you can launch with a Bristol Ridge today on AM4, it will be compatible with the Zen-based AM4 products coming in the future. So you will see that kind of longevity through time and spanability up and down the stack. with the AM4 architecture, which is, again, if you think of what is important for commercial customers, that's pretty key. I mean, consumers like the upgradability, but they kind of realize maybe in 2 or 3 years I might be ready for something new anyway. But a corporate enterprise customer may have a longer term, and they like the ability to not only potentially upgrade, but also service through time. So that's a key part of the AM4 story, is that scalability and that longevity message. Really critical for customers. I don't know if you want to, the one thing I will say about, you know, the Zen, and actually it's a corporate thing, right, is what we're going to see there, right? We're looking at making great CPUs, right? Taking you know, back that leadership position in terms of the CPU performance. Great graphics, right? Continuing our leadership. We talked about how marrying those two together, we believe AMD is so important. And then the third one is power efficiency, right? Improving that power efficiency. So we have a corporate mandate there. So what you're going to see, you see a lot of that in Bristol Ridge. What Zen's going to do is continue to build on that corporate philosophy of great CPU performance, great APU performance, taking those two together, and then doing it in very power optimized. So a lot of what we talked about with Bristol Ridge, you're going to see even more with Zen. So it fits very well within our corporate strategy, where we're going, and what we believe, more importantly, customers are looking for in great products, right? So that's what you're going to see with Zen. We're very excited about it. We're very excited about Bristol Ridge. We have a fantastic products. Engineers have done a lot of hard work, and a lot of that work will be applied to the next generation of products. So you're going to see a nice building stone of AMD to provide, you know, better value, we believe. We didn't talk too much about the opportunity piece, but that's, we believe, especially in corporate enterprise with the Pro brand, we give the customers choice, and we get more with your AMD solution. You can get richer system configurations, you can get open standards-based manageability across the stack, you know, the leading art of security across the stack. We don't try to, you know, separate or you know, we try to provide a great choice. So you get more opportunity with an AMD type solution. It's resonating very well with our customer base.
Yeah, can't wait to see. So
yes.
Thank you very much for the time.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.